Well, it is 4 p.m. on August 18th, 2026. I'm going to call the City of Iowa City work session to order. Hello to everyone. And we're going to start with item number 1, clarification of agenda items. We'll move on to item number 2, information packet discussion, August 6th. And information packet, August 13th. And we will move on to item number 3 on our agenda, which is the pedestrian mall safety discussion. And I am going to turn this over to our city manager, Jeff Rowan.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So it was back on April 21st council meeting in which this item for downtown safety was placed on the work session pending list. That was just 2 days after the tragic shooting that we had on April 19th in our pedestrian mall. Chief Liston's here. He's going to walk you through the details that are in the information packet memo. Ultimately have a recommendation for you that centers around a joint walking beat with the University of Iowa public safety team. And I just wanted to start by thanking the University of Iowa for their support through this incident. I've worked in a college town my whole career, either here in Iowa City or in a college town in Illinois, and I've been blessed to be a part of a lot of really good town-gown partnerships and overall good relationships. I think the support that we felt as staff from the university from the first minute after this incident has been as strong as I've seen through current day. They were there offering first responder services, alerting the public through their Hawk Alert system. They supported us night and day through those early days in the investigation, and then post-incident, the safety planning that they've done with Chief Liston and his team, and the long-term commitment that they're offering here. Again, is a strongest show of partnership that I've seen in my time in working in that town-gown relationship. So I do want to thank them. I know we've got a lot of decisions ahead of us in terms of what our next steps are, but I felt that was important to say. I'm going to turn it over to Chief, who's going to walk you through some violent crime statistics and also talk to you about the partnership with the University of Iowa Police Department.
Thank you. Dustin Liston, Chief of Police. One thing I want to note, 5.5 years ago, I didn't need glasses to read things, and so it's funny how quickly things can change. I want to thank you for the opportunity to address you on the issue of safety in our downtown area, and I want to be really clear with one important message. Downtown remains a generally safe place for residents, workers, and visitors and businesses. The vast majority of people who spend time down there do so without incident. Our Ped Mall continues to be the heart of our downtown. At the same time, we must acknowledge reality. Violent incidents do occur. While they remain relatively infrequent, each one has a real impact on victims, nearby businesses, and public perception. These incidents, though limited in number, cannot be ignored or minimized. I'm going to provide you a factual overview of recent trends and outline the steps already underway, as well as recommending next actions. Our goal is a clear-eyed assessment that neither exaggerates the problem nor understates the need for continued vigilance and targeted response. So I want to talk about violent crime in the downtown area over the last 6.5 years, so from 2020 on. And we define violent crime using the FBI's definition: aggravated assault, murder, non-negligent manslaughter, rape, and robbery. And the area we're talking about, we're going to talk about Area 1, which is the way we define our downtown, which is the boundaries are the Iowa River west, Iowa Avenue to the north, Dodge Street to the east, and Kirkwood Avenue to the south. Now, the downtown proper, which is what most of us think, the Ped Mall area, we're defining as Clinton, the area inside of Clinton, Iowa, Gilbert, and Burlington. So I'll talk about the Area 1, and I'll also talk about downtown proper to put a finer point on it. From January 1st, 2020 to June 3rd, 2026, there were 430 violent crime offenses in the downtown, the larger downtown area. 62% of those were in the downtown proper, the smaller Ped Mall area. 81% of those occurred on weekends, Friday evening through Sunday morning, concentrated between the times of 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. 75% of those violent crimes in Area 1, the larger downtown, were aggravated assaults, with 12% being robbery or forcible sex offenses. In Area 1, the larger area, during that time period, there were 20 shootings, which averages to 1 every 4 months, evenly distributed between 2 and 4 a year. And we define a shooting, as we've talked about before, as corroborated gunfire, excluding suicide attempts or accidental discharges. 89 rounds were fired in those 20 shootings, with 16 people hit by gunfire. 11 of the 20 were in the Ped Mall area, or the smaller downtown area. That averages out to nearly 3 violent crime incidents per month in the downtown proper. And as you guys know, the downtown is visited by thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of people on a weekend night, and it's an elevated vulnerable bystander risk there. The weekend late nights, those are our busiest calls for service time, which means less time for proactive patrol and community policing. Post-incident, post-April 19th, as Jeff mentioned, we had immediate UIPD, and for that matter, all agencies in Johnson County assisted. We transitioned the following weekend with partnership with the University of Iowa to ongoing walking patrols every Friday and Saturday night. The UIPD contributed a minimum of 2 officers and a supervisor, and sometimes up to 4 officers per shift, all on overtime. Some of those were forced on overtime. Iowa City's practice was the same. Additional overtime officers on downtown on the weekends, pre and post incident. We had been doing that prior to, due to the risk volume in a vulnerable area. The successes of the combined patrol have been as follows. There was a decent article in the Daily Iowan a few weeks after the incident, but high visibility as a deterrent and reassurance, focused on prevention, not diluted by regular calls. Officers aren't being pulled away to handle regular calls for service or handle bar checks. It's strengthened by interagency relations and mutual aid. So we're basically doubling the presence down there by partnering with the university. In that time, since April 19th, we have seized 6 firearms downtown, including 3 in the downtown proper in the smaller Ped Mall area, just since April 19th. The refinements we'd like to make. We'd like more time for relationship building with downtown employees, patrons, and partners. We want to model this after the success of our downtown liaison program. The position that Colin Fowler currently fills, we'd like to see that work into the nighttime. The business owners are eager for collaboration. City manager's office and members of my staff met with the bar owners 2 days after the shooting, and it was pretty unanimous on what they wanted to see down there, and it was more presence. Long-term success requires dedicated, not overtime or rotating, sergeants and officers who are fresh or focused. Again, we're currently staffing that with people on overtime, sometimes forced on overtime, so some of these people are working double shifts. We'd like to have dedicated staff to follow the community policing model. These people are going to be known to the business owners down there, and they're going to develop relationships with them. The recommendations are to leverage partnership, enhance visibility, strengthen community policing, stakeholder collaboration, minimize violent crime occurrence or severity, and keep late night downtown safe and welcoming. The core proposal would be to create 3 new specialty positions, 1 sergeant and 2 officers. We'd work with the University Police Department, which is prepared to make a parallel investment. The likely schedule, we've got a lot of things to work out, and we've got time to do it, but the likely schedule would be Wednesday through Saturday nights, like a 4-10 schedule. We'd have to be flexible with that. But on Wednesdays and Thursdays, obviously there's less activity downtown, so that would provide more time for community-based policing events, training, and professional development. The rationale for dedicated staff: the consistency enables true community policing orientation, unlike rotating or new officers every night. Better strategic operations, information sharing, and early intervention on escalating behaviors. And supervisory support eases pressure on existing teams and improves overall efficiency. The implementation timeline and staffing authorization, we'd like to increase authorized staff from 85 to 88 in the coming weeks to accelerate hiring and promotion. The dedicated sergeant is likely several months out. The interim reliance on overtime officers until full-time positions are filled without impacting minimums. And we anticipate there would be minimal to no impact this fiscal year to the budget because it will take time to fill those positions. And I'll turn it back over to Jeff to talk more budgetary issues.
Yeah, so I just want to talk about the funding environment. In another 2 weeks, we're going to be sitting here at the same table talking about property tax reform. And we have to acknowledge what the financial reality is for us going forward. Simply put, the revenue constraints that were placed on cities with this recent legislation will not keep pace with the cost of providing municipal services. That's going to hit different cities at different times and impact us in slightly different ways. But at the end of the day, when we look ahead, we do not see the revenue stream coming in that's going to support our current level of services citywide, those services that are funded by property tax, over the long term. That means tonight and subsequent nights when you're talking about this, you're going to have some tough decisions. And I think these tough decisions are going to continue to roll through different budget sessions in the years ahead. And we're going to have to prioritize which services are the most critical for this community. When I thought about this and I talked to the chief about this, we ultimately believed that this investment is critical for the community and should be prioritized. That's difficult to say in this funding environment, but ultimately that's where we landed, that this is a critical investment, and it is important for us to make it despite the financial challenges. And that's going to make an even more uphill battle ahead with future budget sessions. But again, we believe it's the right decision to make, and thus making the recommendation to you. We'll wrap up by just a couple concluding remarks, and then look forward to answering your questions along with Chief Liston. I want to talk a little bit about the growth in police positions over the last 15 years or so, and we detailed this in the 2020 report that's still available online. I think there's other sources of data that show kind of staffing levels, but the police department has remained relatively flat in terms of sworn officer positions over the last 15 years. We've added 4, and those have all been specialty or investigation positions. Other positions added in the police department have been civilian based at that time. So for a steadily growing community like us, I'd say that's probably a bit unusual that we haven't added just your average or your typical patrol positions. But we've been very, I think with all our funding recommendations, not just in the police department, we come to you and we see a very specific need, and in the past those have been addressed by specialty positions. So think of the downtown liaison officer or the sexual assault investigator. Those are very specific tasks that we were looking to improve service levels on with the community, and that's what we see here. Is we see violence prevention and community policing, relationship building as that missing baseline service that we should be offering, and we believe that increasing by those 3 positions that the chief mentioned, we'd be able to provide a stronger service to the community. I think with that, Chief, unless you had anything else that you wanted to offer, we maybe turn it over for questions.
Yeah, if I could I just want to describe the margins that we operate on. I've had several conversations with many of you. Since I've been here, we've added 1 sworn position. I don't come asking for positions if I don't think we really need them. We're authorized 85 right now. We have 82. We have a new officer. He was a former officer, so a certified officer starting on Monday. So that'll be 83. And I think it's a valid question to say, well, you've never been able to get to 85. Why don't you just get to 85? It takes us so long to spin up new staff. So we have a conditional offer out to a non-certified person who will start the academy in January. He'll graduate the academy in April. He'll go through 4 months of field training, and if everything works out perfectly, he'll be able to contribute as one of our numbers a year from now. So it just takes us so long because we don't overhire. So my thought is, if we are authorized 88, I think we'd probably hover around 85. We'd finally be able to get to that number because we'd have to go over to account for attrition because it takes us so long to spin people up. Because we don't hire 86 if we can get to 85. If we can get to 86 or 87, and then eventually we'll probably be back down. But where our positions are allotted, we have 17 supervisors from myself down to the sergeants. We have 14 detectives. And then we have 54 people assigned to, 54 people that are officers. 50 of those are assigned to patrol. So 14 people are assigned to day watch, 18 and 18 on the other 2 shifts. So we have 4 people that aren't assigned, 4 positions. They're not people because we don't have those positions full. We have 4 positions that aren't assigned to patrol. And those positions, the names have changed over the years. We've called them specialty positions. But right now, 2 of those positions are full. That's our Collins position, the downtown liaison, and that's our co-responder. The other 2 that are unfilled would be a secondary co-responder and our community outreach officer. Those have gone on and have never been filled since I've been here. We just haven't had the staffing because patrol takes a priority. So that's where we are, and I feel like if we can get to 88, if we are authorized 88, we eventually can get close enough to where we can fill those specialty positions. And I would consider these as specialty positions. We haven't come up with a name for it, but I'm thinking like the nighttime downtown liaison unit or something like that. One of the things, we do this meeting with the city manager every month, and I have a wish list. The first thing on my wish list the entire time we've been doing that has been an extra supervisor. So in my former agency, we had 1 extra supervisor at least per shift than we have here. And evenings, as you guys can imagine, is one of the busiest shifts, and they're running around going to call. And I think in the interim, this position would go to evenings to help with the downtown issue. And then once we got this specialty position stood up and specialty unit stood up, it'd be permanently assigned to them. So with that, I think we can take any questions you have. But it's not lost on either of us what we're asking. Again, this is my going on 6th year here, and I've asked for 1 sworn position, and that was a sexual assault investigator. So I don't take this lightly, and I understand it's a big decision.
Thank you both. And council, it's our time to ask any questions, or we can deliberate as well.
Will this position have, or this recommendation have any impact on the existing daytime liaison, or will that just, this
No.
is on top of?
No, I was joking with him saying, well, his position's getting moved tonight, and he wasn't too happy, but no, we'll keep his position.
Chief, you mentioned 4 sworn officers, I think, that have been added over a number of years. Is that right?
Jeff mentioned that in the last 15 years.
15
Since I've been
years.
here, it's been 1, yeah.
Okay. How many civilian positions in that time, or how many do we have now? Maybe is a better question.
So if we have 85, if you count crossing guards, I think we have around 130. So, and that includes animal control. But since I've been here, and this is a stab, but we've added several civilian positions. We've added the part-time community outreach officer dealing with immigrants, and we have the civilian data analyst that we've added. Might be drawing a blank. It seems like we've added 1 more, but
Animal services, I believe we added a
Yep.
position, a customer service type position. And then slightly related, a public information officer that's in our community, not in the police department, in the communications division that serves both police and fire, so quasi related there.
and that was a position that had been held by a sworn officer before.
Yeah, that was formerly a specialty position for an officer. I think that's it. I'm not recalling anything else, but
I should have anticipated that question. That's a good one.
You mentioned it would take some time to fill these positions. I mean, I heard estimations, and you never know, right? But I've heard estimations about what to expect between 1 year and 2 years. Does that sound
Yes.
okay?
Yep. When we're having the conversation, we've had several meetings in the president's office with the university staff, and that's what I tell them I think is a realistic timetable to get our staffing to where it needs to be to fill those positions. Yeah. And just so you know how, we wouldn't hire someone and they go immediately to that position. We hire people, they go to patrol, and then we put that position out for someone to put in for, to apply for that, to move from wherever they are in the department to that position. So when we add positions, that's just adding on our staffing table, but that doesn't mean that's a brand new officer that's going to be doing that.
So you'd expect these would be internal reassignments, promotions, what have you?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Including for the additional sergeant position that you're talking about, that leadership role that's been on your wish list, that
Correct.
would be an internal.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Typically, you want to teach someone to be a police officer, or in this case, you want to teach someone to be a supervisor first, so they would work with other supervisors. These positions will be a little more autonomous. So I don't think it'd be fair to put a brand new sergeant in charge of when they hadn't really supervised people.
Sure. So,
Go ahead.
so just so the public knows too, so since April 19th, we have actually, would you say we've had this additional 3 bodies in that sort of dedicated to that downtown? Like already, if I understand correctly, we're kind of already doing a version of this, but relying on rotating staff on overtime. Is that correct?
Correct. And we are going to continue to do that, but it's going to be people who are working on an overtime basis. It's going to be different people every night. And in some cases, we have to force. And that's been the university's issue. They started out with 4, and then they're having a hard time getting volunteers to do it.
Well, and I think that's important for people to know. I know several of, including some people here on this council, have students at the University of Iowa, or several of my friends have students that are just starting at the University of Iowa. So they know even if it takes a year or more to spin this all the way completely up, that doesn't mean that our downtown is going to be lacking that additional protection, coverage, public safety presence for this upcoming school year, which is just getting underway. So I think that's an important thing for the public to know, that is already a level of protection. What I hear you saying, and how I'm kind of processing this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what we're looking at is how do we make this sustainable, longer term, and more effective by not having the rotating staff. Is that a fair?
Correct. Yes.
So, but also with that, there's already, because I'm probably not the only person who looks at the price tag, and that's, you're not doing cartwheels, but there's already a cost to the city to do what we're doing because of overtime. Is that also correct?
Correct. We're paying people overtime to fill those spots. So there is a cost, and the same with the university.
So there's a monetary cost. I don't know if you happen to have a ballpark figure of that. But in addition to the monetary cost, is there a cost in terms of overall personnel, morale, effectiveness of the department as we do this month after month after month?
Right. We could certainly get you the monetary cost. We could run the numbers. But that's what we're kind of addressing is it starts, you wonder if it remains sustainable to be doing this 5 years from now, where we're still forcing a day watch officer or an evening watch officer to stay until 3 a.m. to do this. So that's what I worry about. And then it starts to feel like it did about 5 years ago when we were down in the 70s, and new officers, we used to joke about, I hope you don't want to go to a Hawkeye game because you're never going to have a day off, and that's just not sustainable.
Thank you.
If I could.
I just want to ask you. Somebody's talking.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, the 3 positions that we have not filled yet, and one of them now at the almost finished from the academic. Is this we budget for this already? Do you, in the top of your mind, you know how much that budget is? Is it close to what you ask right now, like 370 something thousand, or less? Anyone know?
The 85 positions in the budget would be the same as the I guess if we're not filling 3, it's pretty close to the same. The only difference is a sergeant's paid a little bit more than your typical officer. So it'd be a little bit higher for the 3 we're requesting, just because there's 1 sergeant in that mix. But the cost estimate that we offered was based on just the step one officer, the step one sergeant, which is how we would project our payroll to with any vacant positions.
Sure, and those three you mentioned, that specialized positions, the one that in the police academic right now is a regular officer, right?
Right.
Is it a surgeon or just like regular?
No, everyone who comes from the academy or a new hire starts as just a regular officer. They go to patrol, and then after they get some experience, they could put in for a specialty position or an investigative spot, or they could try to promote to a supervisor.
Okay, unless somebody who came ready already like become surgeon, or that's the way typically the surgeon process go.
Right. We have 2 officers that came from other agencies that were supervisors at their agency. They still have to be an officer here for at least 3 years before they can promote to supervisor, which I'm hoping they do. But we want them to learn our culture, our department, because sometimes the agencies they come from aren't the same.
Oh, that means like, anyway, this is going to take time.
It's going to take time. And one thing I forgot to mention I had in my notes, and I think it's important, when I talk about how the margins that we have. So right now, we have 82 officers. We have 9 officers that, again, are not, and I might be repeating myself, that are not contributing at all. 2 at the academy, 2 in FTO, and 5 that are out. Last week, we had 15 officers at crime scene training, which is not uncommon to have a large, when you start doing percentages of the department, that's 10% of our department that aren't contributing because of either academy training or illness or long-term injury. Then last week, we had another 20% of our department out on training, and that is not uncommon, that, we have mandatory training we have to go to. Never mind the fact that a few people are sick here and there, or people have their patrol officers get pretty healthy amount of leave. They get, I think, 11 holidays. They get a lot of time off, and so we have to account for that. So our numbers get run down pretty quick. And back to a good argument would be like, you're at 82, just hired 85. But again, because of the turnover that we have and the long buildup to get people out in the field, if we were at 85, we'd be at 85 for a couple weeks until someone retired, and then we'd be back at this. And we don't have 82 people out in the field. We have 73 out in the field if everyone shows up at work.
And if anyway, the surgeon have to go through the academy, have some experience, and after that promote to supervisors, is this like you have to hire a new person to go through? Was this process, or you can also just like promote somebody from the people who already...
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we'll do.
To make it faster.
We will promote them into this position eventually, but we still have to
hire somebody to cover their position.
To cover their spot, correct, kind of backfill.
Sure.
We've had that conversation before, I think, every year, right? Because there's always these unfilled positions that we've talked even the last few months when we created the community response reserve fund, right? We had the conversation of like, we know each year there's excess money in the budget because those positions aren't ever filled. I think, just to kind of back this up, when we're talking about community safety, I appreciate in the memo, this is a proposal coming from you, Chief, and the city manager. I hope we can have a broader discussion before we would make a decision like this. Mostly because we're talking about violent crime prevention. And I think, I would love for if our data analysts or others have information that suggests that a physical presence of officers is preventing violent crime, let's have that conversation. I do think the data shows that a presence of officers moves violent crime and can deter it in specific moments when there's an officer there. But if we want to be talking bigger picture and more like upstream, why did this happen? Why did individuals come from outside the community? What could have intervened, prior to the incredibly efficient, good response that our officers had on scene? So I would just ask that we, kind of zoom that out. We know that from the county perspective, the violence prevention program that we have very intentionally collaborates with law enforcement, but isn't based on law enforcement positions. Those positions are more of a, community, almost social work, if you talk with Jess or Marcus about what their day-to-day is. And I think there are good reasons for that. And there's a good reason that, those positions are in public health and the county attorney's office. So those aren't your purview, Chief, right? And I don't want to take away from what I hear and understand, including from the years that we've been talking about this, that from a basic, patrol standpoint, you're always going to be in this place where you feel kind of short. And I think that's been true for many years. And the other big picture thing that I just don't want to lose sight of is, I think what we'd be talking about with 3 additional sworn officers, knowing that they're starting in patrol, knowing that that's increasing capacity, before we would commit to a permanent investment in that, I want to talk again about the disparity and impact among our community members with police contacts. We know that we had a longitudinal study based on traffic stops for 20-some years. The University of Iowa was engaged to give us updated information. We have the data analysts, but we haven't actually revisited that anytime since, 2020, 2021 maybe?
It's been since I was here. The last Barnum study was probably in 2021, and that's when, shortly thereafter, we engaged university. Yeah.
And I think, there's no, I want to be really, really clear. I do not believe there is overt racist intent happening in enforcement in our community. But what we do know is there is real disparate impact. And it could be that that's improving, but we don't have that information, and I don't want to commit to a permanent investment that would increase that capacity when we know there's disparate impact without taking a look at those numbers and talking about what our options are. I think, and it could be that the data that we have would bear out significant improvements. I don't know, and I hope that we'll get that information soon. And then the other piece is just, the things that we could be investing in that wouldn't be binding us to an additional $500,000 in positions, where in the future, these are general fund dollars. These are the dollars that, are being impacted by these property tax reforms that our city manager is telling us, it's going to be really hard in the coming years. And we could do something on a short-term basis, like a pilot project with, the field mediation that is currently being trained up, and downtown, crisis intervention workers. And we could scope it and say, we want to measure, from here to here, this amount of time, these amount of contacts, this kind of engagement, and see if it makes a difference before we would commit to increasing patrol policing.
I think that you've raised some really interesting points, and it is part of this piece in front of us right now is part of a much larger discussion, and you've raised several components of it. I think where I'm seeing this is that, excuse me, it is part of a yes and. This is focused very specifically on particular growing circumstances of violent crime in a particular area, and that I think that we've all recognized and acknowledged, and actually to a certain extent moved in different or in multiple directions of how to address systemic problems, community problems in alternative ways that help with public safety. In this instance, with violence and gun violence in particular, in talking about a large investment, you're absolutely right. We need a big picture discussion, but in terms of talking about the increasing patrol, without saying, I do want to return to the conversations that to get back to what are the traffic stops and how is the pilot doing. I would love to have an update on that. But what's being proposed here is actually to consolidate and to allow for eventually a team to have more of a community-based, deliberate, and focus, sorry for the repetition, on a particular segment of a neighborhood with different people in that neighborhood of the downtown district to be able to create relationships. And so this isn't actually to increase patrol, as Chief has said. This is to have a team that would address this specific issue. And this is our densest area. And the statistics are there that there have been some incredibly scary things happen. And I just want to return to it's a yes and conversation. But I think one of the things that we actually have not talked about a lot in the past years is the actual role that public safety, a la the police, have as a part of community safety. And in this particular instance, I think that this proposal has some legs to it in that they have actually taken firearms and that there haven't been incidents and that there has been deterrence is one way to help in instances. So I'm just saying it's a yes and. Mm-hmm. I think to continue to ask, and I know it will take time, so there will continue to be overtime, but ultimately, in the same way that we had social work, an embedded team of, rather than sort of ad hoc, a police officer sort of running in a rota to team up with a social worker, it's much stronger partnership for that team to work together so that they can have a better bond with working in the community. Mm-hmm. I feel like this model could be stronger than simply having people working overtime.
Just one point of clarification, because I may have missed it in the memo. I did not get the impression that we are saying that this incident that happened in April is part of rising violent crime in the downtown. Is there a pattern of rising violent crime that you're trying to respond to?
I think, like I mentioned in my opening comments, and I mentioned during the press conference too, we used to have more shootings, but the trend has leveled off now. But it's such a high, densely populated area that again, it's not the Wild West, and I don't want to portray that because that's not fair to the community, and I know that's not what anyone up here is saying. But it's a regularly occurring thing that happens downtown. We've had multiple shootings in the Ped Mall when many people were around, and that just can't be acceptable as a community. And I know no one's suggesting that. So that's, and I agree with Megan. I think it is, Megan, I think it is a yes and, and I'm glad you point out, I run the police department. There are a lot of different strategies that we participate in, but we don't run. We work closely with CVI, but it's not a law enforcement operation. We're working with the mediation group. We're all on board on this, and I would love to catch some of these actors long before they even thought about this stuff. But I also think that had we had someone on April 19th, we had someone very, very, very close, and my heart of hearts tells me that gun didn't run out of bullets. The person stopped shooting, and that's because we were there. But had we been standing there, and like you mentioned, I don't think people are going to be shooting up the Ped Mall when we have officers standing in there. Does that move it somewhere else? Well, I'd rather move it out of a place that has 10,000 people hanging out, And that's one of the things people ask me why. A lot of times, most of the time, these people are from out of town. Well, why are they coming here? Sometimes crime flows like water. It goes to the path of least resistance. If they feel like they can, I've often said, I want people to be comfortable downtown. I don't want them to be comfortable committing crime downtown. So that's our goal here. And again, I don't want it to be a SWAT team out there. Mm-hmm. I want it to be a bunch. I wish we could clone Colin Fowler. I'd like it to be 3 Colin Fowlers down there with his bright yellow shirt. That's what we would want. And that's the model that I'm looking for. So.
But just to be clear, not rising violent crime downtown.
No,
Agree it's unacceptable whenever it happens.
Not rising, and I apologize for sort of
No, I just, for the public,
off the cuff.
want to make sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
We're responding to a specific incident.
Yeah, limited, but
Having that
cannot,
conversation.
yeah, it is generally a safe place, and it's limited, but it cannot be ignored nor minimized. And I think that sort of saying, let's, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that when it comes to, I was going to ask specifically when it comes to the, how positions can change within a department, how you are like, well, nowadays we are seeing less of a call volume in around noon or whenever that shift is. So we think that some of these officers can go to, we can promote them or reassign them to a team like this. And I guess one thing that I think about, especially when it comes to, the funding we've approved and field mediation is, especially since this is going to be, probably a long time until we hire these officers, I try to think about like the here and now as well. What can we do that we might be positioned to quickly do as well? And I think when when Laura says something like field mediation, community crisis responders, I think sometimes the public can get the impression that this is, oh, there's a shooting, we're sending out the mediator. It's like, well, no. What it does do is, and I hear you saying it's a capacity problem. We don't want people there, and we don't want people overly exerting themselves with overtime and stuff like that. But I do think about the examples set from us that you can look at the data from places like Durham or Dayton or Seattle, for instance, where they were effectively able to reduce their call volume and just like make their existing staff be able to go and respond to the violent things. I think about the other direction. How can we make it to where we can significantly reduce the officers having to respond to more minor things in bars or small conflicts or trespasses, things like that in bars, to where we can make it to where we're having the same desired effect of more officers out on the beat, being visible. And so I guess that's where I agree that when it comes to making a decision like this for most importantly, before budget comes public safety. That doesn't mean we don't think about a $500,000 investment every year on the high end. But how can we reduce the potential collateral damage as well? That just sometimes comes inadvertently from increased police presence. So yeah.
I think that's an interesting point too, talking about collateral damage, because I think that's kind of gets back to the point of this particular place and particular times of day, because the concentration of people and the need for that presence, or at least if we think the presence is going to reduce the number of people willing to escalate their own violence, just the deterrent of having an officer there in a uniform. But the collateral damage, when you have somebody popping off firearms. I mean, so we had this incident that happened on April 19th, and multiple people were injured. The poor, the most serious, the young woman that was hit in the head. And our downtown, that high concentration we have is also it's kind of, both things are true. It's a very diverse time to be down there, and this young woman that was shot was the child of African immigrants. So bullets don't care. And so when we talk about collateral damage, that strikes my mind. And I was thinking back to some of the other near misses that we've had. The chief mentioned the number of shootings every so often. We've had a couple downtown where I can't remember which bar it was, one of the bars, I think, close to the public library, but multiple shots, and it just didn't happen to not hit anybody, hit a few buildings, especially in the density of people downtown. I mean, that's a kind of collateral damage, too, that, I think is really important to think about. And I think Councilor Burgess made an excellent point talking about, the challenge we face, and we have local programs and that the county does and that we do, and looking at other sources that might drive crime, as we try to take a look at ways to help with everything from people staying in their homes to affordable housing, all kinds of issues, supporting programs to help people get treatment for drug addiction and mental health care. But then what happens when we have people coming in from out of our community that we don't have an opportunity for our programming to touch ahead of time. And so that's where I see, that point, place, time, and the value of that physical presence, because that is like in that concentration of people, especially on, Fridays and Saturday nights, which we all know. And, I've been enjoying the downtown Ped Mall since I was in my early 20s. So, that's not unusual. That's been that way for a long time. It's a place we do want people to enjoy, and even into the wee hours of the morning, and to enjoy safely. And especially, again, from the perspective of parents with kids at the university, or, having people working downtown in the different bars and stuff like that. I mean, that tends to me to be some of the more compelling parts of the case for this approach. I will say I do also appreciate, in this proposal we've been given, the community policing aspect. So it's not just focusing on, hey, let's have a big bulky response on those, presence on those 2 days of the week, those 2 evenings of the week, but a lot of focus on that community policing, kind of walking the beat, talking with people, identifying things ahead of time, being there week after week, and establishing those relationships. I mean, everything that I've learned about policing indicates that that's actually a very positive way, and that does some of the work of mitigating some of the other kinds of collateral damage. And so I appreciate that that's part of this proposal.
Yeah, and one thing that I think I should make clear is I think that the proposal for creating a specific unit, exactly like you're describing, sounds like a good idea. It's about I guess when I would say collateral damage, not just from having, it's about reprioritizing where our police department's focus is and giving it the capacity to do so by easing the strains on it. Does that make sense?
It does, but
Okay.
It's kind of what this proposal seems like is they're doing, is they're bringing us something of looking at like a way to, something we haven't done in this way. We're kind of doing now with the overtime and whatever, but this would be that approach, but done in a way that would be more effective, is kind of how I'm reading it. But I actually do think, like, then seeing how we can integrate the various things, whether it be the new crisis intervention, or the existing sorts of mental health liaisons. So, I know, and just from my conversations with Officer Fowler, who we've referred to several times, and for the public who doesn't know, that's our daytime liaison in the downtown district, that through his work, being able to create relationships with people that are downtown a lot, and maybe some of our unhoused population, and able to build a relationship and then move them into either the street outreach, connect them with the street outreach from Shelter House, connect with different mental health, the mental health liaison program. So I mean, that is another way in which I see that, like, as Councilor Alter said, a yes and. Like being able to, like, say, okay, if we do this, we also want to make sure that we're continuing with the pieces that this council has already also supported, like the liaison, giving a shot to this, the intervention. Am I saying that wrong?
The field mediation?
Field mediation. Thank you so much. To see if that works. But in the meantime, like, that's all great stuff, I think, or has great potential. We'll see, when it all plays out. But in the meantime, trying to get that, like, okay, we need something a little bit more concrete, a little bit sooner, and something that, would be sustainable and also be more effective community policing on top of that. I mean, those are the things I like about it. So.
And I think we just have to be real that we're going to be trading dollars then. Right?
Oh, no.
If we make this investment, I would hope the council would be willing then to also invest in these other things that we haven't yet, right? Other than the ARPA investment that we made with mobile crisis and the liaisons that we've added. So it'll be a net overall increase, which also means taking away from other places in the budget.
Which is, that's, in the city managers spoke about that at the beginning, and I agree. That is kind of one of those ugly things that, pieces of this, I agree. I think some of the other stuff, as they come online, as we try them out, as we get solid proposals, like I wouldn't want to say, oh, we'll do a dollar for dollar match until we know how well they work. But as we get as we get like tried and tested and things like that, then I think absolutely, things should be on the table for us to be talking about and support as things look like they're effective.
And I think we need to be thinking about, sorry,
No, go ahead.
the culture downtown too. I think, as someone who's been here forever, I was talking with Jeff the other day about like the pre-21 ordinance downtown and how much the culture changed at that point in time. I do think, with this proposal is 3 dedicated officers, and UIPD would also have 3 dedicated officers. So that's an addition of 6 armed officers walking, through downtown. And like, what does that tell the community about the culture? I think it tells the community that we're expecting fights, we're expecting violence, we're expecting alcohol overconsumption, we're expecting to need to crack down. I do not think that's the culture that any of us are really wanting to cultivate in the downtown area. And I think having this come out of budget cycle in response to not an increase in violent crime is concerning to me, just because I think the issues that, Chief, you've talked about, we have been talking about every year. And the capacity, like this cushion problem, we've been talking about every year. And we never fill all the positions. So this is not new to this issue. This is not new to policing in general. We've had these specialty positions that we've been wanting to fill for as long as Chief has been here, and have been unable to because we can't hire enough officers with the attrition, with the people being out.
And the culture.
Yeah, exactly. So I just don't want us to think that I think this is like all the things that the Chief is saying are totally valid. And I don't want us to get caught thinking that this is the response to a particular shooting on the Ped Mall. I think these issues are longitudinal and real, and we have an obligation as stewards of public funds, if nothing else, to not rush into hiring or adding the capacity for 3 additional positions in any department. Right? Not like take it away from the police department. In any department, often what we see is, okay, we are not filling this one, but we would love to have another leadership role. So what comes before council is a swap, right? We're going to take this one off the books and we want to replace it with this other, step, whatever. We're not seeing that here. We're seeing a full ask for 3 additional full-time positions, which we all have to know how basically impossible that will be to take away in the future.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, thank
And I
you.
do want to get in here at some point.
Yes, please. I just believe, as Councilor Oliver said, I don't have any problem with the proposal, but you are doing it anyway right now. Like there is officer over there, we give them overtime, so whatever, you are covering it, but we're doing through the overtime and all this. So again, I will go back to the position that is not being filled, and we have somebody almost ready to come in from the academy, and we can just use those positions for now to fill them out, because this is being like for a long time, it's not being filled, instead of like just like adding more. You was just saying that you would like to see the people downtown comfortable and coming to the downtown and not thinking. I also don't believe like presence of like policing in downtown. If it makes some people comfortable, it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. To come even to the downtown we have a lot of, but if we are doing it anyway, why should we why should we just think about additional 3 officers that we are not gonna fill immediately? We have already 3 positions. If we can fill those 3 positions right now and cover the thing that you have, but important to me is going back to the study and see like the study from 2021, the traffic study, like the traffic stop is still, even though I see like a lot of improvement from like 15 years ago, but I have a lot of people who complain that being stopped more than regular eye on here. Immigrants, people of color, and I would love to see the traffic stop. I would love to, like, in the same time, while we are doing, like hiring for those positions that we never filled. While we're doing that, we should also evaluate the data, evaluate what can we do to solve those problems. It's not just about like bringing officers like everywhere in the city, and that's what make us safe. I don't think so. But yeah, I understand that downtown is a busy area, and the focus is there because there is many incidents. Yeah, I don't have problem with that. But we already budget for 3 different officers. So can we fill that first, and in the meantime, just work on evaluating, like the study, evaluating the traffic stop, and see how can we prevent, like work in preventions more than just, wait until the things happen.
Appreciate all the questions and comments so far. Lots going on here. I guess I just wanted to add to the conversation about this is a longitudinal need in our community. It's not just for one event that we're having this discussion. We saw the stats where from January 2020 through June 2026, 430 violent crimes. And in the Area 1, which is our downtown proper, there was 62% of violent crimes. And so when I look at this and I hear the concern about why are we going this route, I also want to say that I do think sometimes we underestimate the resources that we already have in our community. I think, bringing on the civilian aspects of our police department we're advanced more than many of our communities, other cities that are larger than us. We're doing field mediation, working on that, the CVI program. There's a lot of great things that we're doing that is in addition to policing, that I really think that we underestimate some of the discussions and the impact that we're having through those programs. Of course, there's still more to do. Willing to sit around and have those conversations. But in this moment, we're talking about specifically 3 positions for downtown. I have to say that I'm from Chicago again. And today, back in the day, we begged for police to come around in our crime-infested areas because their presence made a difference. It did deter crimes. Yes, it may have moved it to another place at times, but often it would move from where it was. And when we're talking about downtown and we're talking about violent crimes, I do believe that we're going to see a decrease. And you won't get that data. One, we're a growing community, and so as we grow, we may even see the number of violent crimes grow. But I believe that if the police are down there, because we're a growing community, we won't know the crimes that were not, caused because of their presence. So I want to acknowledge that the staff is presenting to us something that has been happening, and they're already down there, as we all know, that they're doing overtime already. The need is there, and I'm going to support the 3 officers. I think where people are having discussions about if there's a officer that is assigned to a day shift, can they not move where maybe the needs are not there any longer? Can they move towards where the need is at night? Or, the positions aren't being used right now. Can we just use those open positions and all that other stuff? I think that we're talking about staffing patterns, and I don't believe that the council fully know about staffing patterns, and you have to have, you'll never probably be fully staffed. And because of the longevity of getting, new officers into these roles, and then you also have the retirees that are coming up, which can be planned and to some degree, and then those incidents where, folks kind of leave unplanned. I think the staffing patterns has been accounted for is the point that I want to make. I think the staffing patterns of 88 staff fully within the police department has been calculated. And so while I do appreciate us saying, to the chief and to the department, if there are a decrease in daytime, we do expect you ought to acknowledge that and pick that up and make some transitions. But that's with any department, where if you're seeing less of a need in your staffing patterns or your staffing doesn't meet those ratios anymore, we expect you to make those changes without without the council needing to identify that. And so I'll be supporting this, and I really do appreciate this conversation, and just wanted to maybe ask council where they are with this on this topic.
If I may, I just have one thing that I wanted to sort of say. First of all, that I am supportive of these three positions. I was looking in the fact that there's been 4 sworn officer positions added in the past, 15 years, I believe is the notes that I took. In that time, there's been 9,000 people added in population. And that's not including who comes in on a weekend or what have you. So I don't think that this is an exorbitant ask. The other thing that I was noting, and we've focused a lot of the conversation on the downtown proper, but the very fact remains that we actually all did approve, a specialty position for an officer to be able to investigate sexual crimes because of the regularity that there have been for forcible sexual offenses, the difficulty and the just horrific nature of them, and in a college town, unfortunately, that tends to be even more rife, and that in Area 1, within those crimes committed, 75.5% of them are for robbery and forcible sex offenses. So I think that there is additional, we've focused this very much on shootings within the Ped Mall, which I'm going to have a comment on that as well. But I think that let's not forget as well that this also has to do with some violent crimes that themselves carry a great deal of trauma for the victims, and that this expands out beyond what's happening just in the Ped Mall, and that these officers would also be able to patrol in that area. One of the things that I did want to comment on is that the notion of, well, there's not that much, and I do not want to fearmonger or say anything, because it is true that we have not been rising in our levels of violent crime, or the shootings, gun violence, thank you. But in the memo, it does say that there has been, on average, 1 per 4 months for the past 6.5 years. And there's plenty of cities that say 1 shooting with victims is too many, period. When we also talk about the impact and racial discrepancy, and that there's too much disparity in terms of who the police are touching, I think one of the groups who hasn't been mentioned are the victims, and who the victims are of gun violence. And this troubles me a great deal. So I understand, and I go back to how I began when I first started talking. This is a yes and. The police recommendation here is not, nor should it be, the only way in which we are addressing community safety and public safety. But it is one piece for one specific problem. I do not think that looking at gun violence and violent crimes and then saying, let's go back and look at traffic safety and equating the two together to say, therefore, we don't need these positions for this particular situation quite makes the mark. At the same time, we absolutely do need to go back and look at those studies and to see how can we do better in terms of a broad, multifaceted, lots of tools in the toolkit. But to say, let's do studies because there aren't enough shootings for us to be worried about, and I know that is not what anyone here on council has said. But I'm not okay with the thing saying, like, we're fine as is because we don't really have that much gun violence.
I don't think anyone's saying that,
Nobody said
respectfully.
that.
And I do think if we wanted to
At moments it came
spend,
across that way.
if we wanted to spend $500,000 a year, committed, locked in, every year on sexual assault prevention, let's do it. Let's do it. There are so many places in the country that we could look to for models on how to make our campus safer relating to that, but we're not talking about preventing, we're literally talking about foot patrols for visibility, and the nexus between visibility and crime prevention is very, very, very tenuous at best. So if we're going to say, think about the victims, if we're going to say, think about prevention, let us take an approach to conscientiously invest in those things, because it's not the reactive tool that is patrol policing. And that's just factual. That's not based on anything that I think is again, I want to be proven wrong. Okay? I'm not trying to plant a flag where it shouldn't be. Like, this is because of all the work that we've done over the years in looking at these issues, because the council has not voiced an interest in adding additional sworn officers before now, even though we've heard these same problems year after year after year. If we want to talk about victim services, if we want to talk about violent crime prevention, then we need to be looking at the tools that are best for that and investing in that.
I will just say that
It can be
oh,
deterrent.
go right ahead.
Yeah, before you can, because I appreciate what you said, but as you said in the end, nobody from this council said that. But the way you said it, you're concluding what I said, or maybe council, I don't want the public to hear us wrong.
Right.
We care about what happened on April 19. If like increasing officer will prevent that, we're gonna do it. There is no problem. And I personally said I'd have no problem with the proposal. We are doing it right now. We spend overtime money, and we can hire the 3 officers that we did not hire yet to cover this for now. And in the same time, do the study. What's wrong with the study is really good. We're gonna come out, from a lot of things, to prevent like this kind of crime. If we can do it, why not? Always like treating the root cause of a problem is like okay from like yes, this kind of because we're preventing it. And I just want the public to know that the city is doing it anyway right now. We have officers in the downtown right now. We pay them overtime. We have 3 officers that we did not hire yet. 1 almost done. Those people can cover those instead of the overtime. In the meantime, let us think about study and everything and revisit the other 3 officers that we're going to add, because we are not going to hire them tomorrow. It's going to take us another 3 years to hire them. Then we can do, while we are thinking about hiring those in 3 years, we can also do the study. I think this is not about, the shooting happened is not enough, and we can, the way that you concluded, we can't wait do the study because the shooting is not enough. No, nobody said that.
No. And I'm
yes, please take that back, because
and I was not intending it. It was not targeted at you specifically.
Not me. Like
it
all
really,
three
I
of
want that
us.
to be. I want it to be clear.
Yeah,
it was not
no
targeted
problem.
at you specifically.
I guess I just want to point out again that we do have some alternatives to policing that we are doing, field mediation, CVI, and so many other things, even within our department, that I do think that we should continue to have those conversations on when we're talking about victims. When we're talking about various aspects of this, there isn't a one-stop shop for anyone. And I do think that's why this role is a part of that equation, while there are other roles to still be filled and conversations to be had that I'm very open to having. I guess at this moment, just wanted to see, the request is for these, to kind of give the to give some communication to staff about these three positions. I wanted to know who want to get some reactions to who's supporting the three positions that are already been, the recommended three positions.
Real quickly, what would be, this is not a decision at this point, correct? This is an indication of whether or not we want to move forward to making a decision, correct?
Correct. We would bring you an item at a future meeting, ideally for us in September. We'd come back to you and ask for 3 new positions to be reflected in our
If
in
we
our hiring
recommend
plan.
that tonight.
Pardon?
If we direct you to do that tonight.
If I felt there was a majority of council that supported it, we would bring it forward.
Sure.
Yes.
So I think I'm leaning enough in support to make it worthwhile bringing back. I'll want to sit with the comments of my various counselors and continue to do some education and some additional fact gathering. But I think right now I would be definitely leaning towards the support.
Again, I don't mind having a 3 officer from the 3 position that we have, but adding additional money right now for, as if we already have 3 position ready, you can use that. I will direct the police chief to go ahead and use that. And even if you need more money to promote one of them to become a surgeon, you can still do that. And, but adding again 3 officers, I'm not agreeing for that right now until we fill out this. And again, if we need more officers in the future, I will revisit that, and we can do this. But I want to fill out this 3 position to direct the police chief to use those existing 3 positions for the sake that he asking for 3 officers.
So that is reassigning already approved positions is what
Yes.
you're stating, although we heard that it's staffing patterns. So the 85 that they have right now, even though it doesn't fill up, at some point it will fill up.
Sure.
And the next day it may drop down to 84. So their staffing patterns are correct for the current need. And so in order to have these positions really be placed there, we have to, in order for it to be within their staffing pattern, it has to be 3 new positions.
Sure. Right now, I think the needs right now, which is brought this proposal to us, is people are working overtime at the downtown, and they need some officer. And that need can be filled with the current, approved budget for 3 officers. And still, I'm open to come and talk about the other one will be specialized. Later, we're going to hire specialized, positions, and we can hire them later, and we can come and talk about it. I don't think it's going to be a problem. But right now, I want to do this. In the same time, think about hiring a specialized. In the same time, think about the study, all of them together.
Okay.
While, this means the police chief got what he want, if they go by what I'm saying. In the same time, we are thinking seriously about doing evaluation and thinking seriously also in the future to hire specialized. Because if I'm not wrong, the position that we assign is a specialized position. So we can hire them still later. But now, for the sake of the time, we have 3 positions open. We don't need even approval for it. Just give him direction to go ahead and hire people.
And they still need to hire for that position, but I just want to get, so I heard from 4
Sure.
of us now, wanted to get the other 2 counselors, if you all are supporting that or not.
I agree with Counselor Saleh.
Okay,
Yeah, I as well.
okay. So, so what, I think the majority number that Jeff mentioned is not exactly true for direction, to get it on a council agenda for a vote. With 3 being present, saying yes, I think that's sufficient enough to put this forward to a council agenda.
Sure. Councilor Mo expressed an interest in watching a recording of this and then coming back, and he had emailed Chief and I and indicated he'd follow up with any other questions after he could watch a recording. So I was going to wait for that to take place.
Yeah, but despite even that, this is just direction to put it on a agenda.
Okay, understood.
This is just a direction to put it
Yeah,
on the
because we can't do
Yeah.
there's no
because what I
majority vote
heard,
here.
I need also our city attorney to like okay on that. I heard area Jeff said if we have enough support tonight, we will move forward with it. And isn't this like a meeting where what we're saying right now consider as we are not like voting, but it's like in a professional setting where 3 people say yes, 3 people say no?
Well, right, but as you indicated, this is not a formal vote, and the mayor has authority to put anything on the agenda whenever
Yes.
he wishes. And so what I understood his direction to be was to go ahead and bring this forth as an agenda item. The mayor has the power to.
And
No, I understand that, but I'm just talking about because area said if we have,
I just indicated there'd be a
Yes.
majority support. I didn't
yes.
mean in the moment here. I know that Councilor Mo is interested in weighing in on this, and
But
I'll
he's
wait
not
till
here.
he's able
And-
to
and-
provide that direction.
Yep, and we know he's not here, but if the council was talking about any topic, 2 people, 2 counselors,
To get an item on the agenda?
correct?
I believe it's 3.
3 people can get an item on the agenda.
Or the mayor, right?
No.
Or the mayor.
The mayor
Mayor
by
can
himself,
bind
yeah.
him or
Right.
herself.
Yes, I know that.
The mayor or 3.
Yeah.
So I was going off that logic with this meeting here, that there was 3 supporting of it.
Sure.
Which it
I
would
just
go,
was
to get on the
talking
agenda.
about what Jeff said.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even if it was to come and fail, at
You
the
can put it
meeting.
later on the agenda by yourself. We understand that.
Yeah, yeah.
I would also encourage us as colleagues to, in the meantime, make sure we are understanding each other and what we are bringing forward and what our ideas are, as to make sure that, because this is something that's serious and all of us deeply care about, and we want to make sure that we understand each other before we go into any decision.
Maybe I'll ask the chief to come back up and just talk about the 85 current positions and the 3 additional positions, please.
Okay, I'll go through the breakdown. We have 85 authorized positions. Currently, we have 82, but we don't really have 82 because 9 of them aren't even contributing. They're either in training, they're out on medical leave, so we're really down to 70. But let's just put those aside and where our people are assigned. We have 17 supervisors, we have 14 people in investigations, we have 54 officers assigned to 54 officers, with 50 of them being assigned to a patrol shift. 14 on days, and that's based off of calls for service and being able to handle regularly occurring incidents. Their minimum staffings are different. On days, they're smaller than they are on evenings and late nights. 18 and 18 on evenings and late nights. So that leaves 4 positions. They're not people, they're just positions that are not assigned to a patrol shift. 2 of those positions are full. They are downtown liaison officer and our co-responder. We have 1 co-responder position that is not occupied. We hope to staff that soon once community can provide us another mental health liaison. And then we have a community outreach person that we would like to fill at some point. So if we were to reprogram some of those, we only have 2 extra positions that aren't assigned to patrol. So we would, I guess, get rid of those positions and assign them to this nighttime downtown liaison, and then we'd have to pull someone else from patrol to be one of the supervisors. So that's where we get to the 85. That's why we asked for 84, because I don't want to get rid of any of those 4, if we can fill them. I don't want to get rid of any of those 4 specialty positions because I think they're important. We've made a commitment, especially on the downtown or the co-responder position. So we have 82 on the books out of 85. We'll have 83 on Monday. Again, but we have to be in a position where we feel staffed appropriately enough on patrol to fill those positions. And that doesn't mean everybody's full staff. Each patrol shift is down a couple of officers, and we can function temporarily with them down a couple of officers. We made a hard decision several years ago. When I first got here, we had no specialty positions full, meaning Colin Fowler was not doing Colin Fowler things. And Jeff Fruin said it's the downtown district has an interest in it. The council has an interest in having that position full occupied. So we had to take someone from patrol, even when our staffing was very low. And I got to tell you, that wasn't a popular decision with my staff because that meant more people were being forced on overtime because those people don't always count towards our minimum staffing on patrol. So that might have been a mealy-mouthed way of...
So I just want to make sure that I understand this. So 83 positions will be filled here quickly next week. And then you have 2 positions that are not filled that will make the 85. Mm-hmm. One is the co-responder, and then the other one is the community outreach person.
Correct. Okay. I just want to remind you that there are 9 of those officers that aren't plugged in any of those spots because they're out. Some of them are on baby leave. Some of them are at the training academy. So that's the part we're always struggling with. We're fighting, and you mentioned it, the staffing
patterns.
We're
Mm-hmm.
trying to get above, and then next thing you know, tomorrow, someone could retire.
Yeah.
Or and that doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen enough. That we can plan for regular attrition, people who we know are going to retire, but we have medical retirements that come up suddenly every year. So that's the challenge. And with our slim margins, that's what makes it tough to fill those specialty positions.
Can you just remind me how long we've been looking for this community response and how long for those 3 positions since we've been looking for them?
We've not been in a position to fill those spots because we didn't have enough officers.
I'm asking how long?
Before I was here. It's not been filled since before I was here. So
And how long you been here?
5.5 years.
Okay. That's my question.
So I think we don't advertise those positions. We're hiring people into them, right? They're filled based on functional. In order for you to have, or for the department to have a functional, consistent staffing level of the full 85, would that require some sort of council authorization for overhiring? In order to really make that work, like in order to really consistently have 85 sworn officers while accounting for the consistent staffing patterns of things like training, medical leave, maternity leave, whatever else that might be coming along. I mean, right now you can only hire up to 85, and if you always have some attrition, it is functionally nearly impossible for any length of time to have the full 85 positions.
And that's been over the history of the department.
Right, I think that's true of any large
30-year officers that say, I can remember being at full staffing for 2 weeks or something.
And it's not unique to police. We've got the Public Works and Transit staff here out in the audience, and they can all relate to this incident where Darien's always hiring bus drivers, right? And that's always going to be the case. We are never really fully staffed at the MTO, mass transit operator position. Ron, I met with Ron and team today, and you probably have 8 or 9 vacancies in Public Works at this time. It's a similarly sized department. That's just, when you get to those larger departments, that's pretty routine to where you're constantly working to get full staffed. You rarely, if ever, get there. And
Right, and that's kind of what I was getting at. If that's what we wanted to do, we would almost have to authorize the overhiring, which was not a practice that we participate in.
Yeah, we haven't really done the overhiring. A good example.
And I'm not really arguing for that, by the way. I'm just.
Correct. A few years ago, we asked you for 4 new transit drivers. It's a very similar situation to what we're in right now, where Darien was having a hard time operationally getting all the needs met. And so people were being pulled off onto overtime, and supervisors would be pulled on the buses to drive. So we came to you and said we could really use 4 more mass transit operators. We've never probably really been full staffed for more than a couple of weeks at best, but going up those 4 positions helped bring stability to that position. And I think that's what we're trying to convey here. If we go up to 88, we don't have, it's probably not realistic to think we'll be at 88 ever for an extended period of time. But if we can get to that 85, 86, where that's our regular, then we can start to change staffing deployment. The chief can start to change the staffing deployment models.
And just one more comment. Just remember how long it takes us to get someone up to full speed. From start to finish, if we don't miss a beat, it's 9 months. So it just
9 months.
Yeah, the academy is 4 months, the training is 4 to 5 months, and then they get out in the field, and that's not background investigation or any of that stuff. So I mentioned we have an offer to one person right now. Well, they won't be this time next year. They'll be in the FTO program. So that's the challenge.
The person who going to start Monday. When the last time you have another one before that join the police department?
Well, I've hired about 40 people in 5.5 years. So, I mean, you can do the math. So we
It was like all of them officer or civilians?
those I'm just talking about officers and many more civilians. Maybe not more than 40, excuse me. But so. What's nice with this one we're getting on Monday, he used to work here. He used to be an Iowa City police officer,
Okay.
so his FTO program will be like a week or something, hopefully, and meeting his training, and then he'll be able to hit the ground running. That's how we look for certified officers, which is what a lot of people in the industry do, people who are officers. We've got several officers. The other agencies don't like it, but we have several North Liberty officers, Coralville officers, and things like that, because they've already been through the academy. That shortens the build-up time because they avoid going to the academy.
I was going to ask how common that was for already certified officers to just, if they move or if they just want to make a career change.
It's much more common now.
Okay.
It's a buyer's market right now, or actually a seller's market. The certified officer can basically go wherever they want right now. Everybody is hiring at all times. We've been lucky. I think we run a pretty good organization. We rarely lose officers. We do sometimes. Usually when we lose officers to go to another agency, it's because their wife gets a job on the other side of the state or her husband gets a job. But we have had plenty of officers come in, and usually they're looking for opportunity. Especially if it's someone who is in Johnson County, whether it be North Liberty or another Johnson County agency, they like the opportunity that Iowa City provides. We're a bigger agency. But.
Sure.
So we could be voting on this as soon as 2 weeks from now
Yeah.
to add 3 additional officers. Could we have an evaluation for that conversation of, like, since this is coming out of cycle, right? And can we just
As
have
others have come out.
Right. No,
I
I absolutely. But I think having, and I just want to be really also very straightforward that most of the staffing changes that we make when we add new positions or we switch out, like, this level of position isn't filled, but we want, this other position. And so we're going to authorize as a council that change in a pay grade, for example, or a job title, as we did also recategorizations after the whole employee, pay evaluation that we did, where we had to do some adjustments. Those were not controversial. We've got a split council on this issue, and I would just ask that we have the opportunity to look holistically to say, what are we foregoing, right? If we had these 3 positions, as you said, we've got other departments that don't have the opportunity to capitalize on a tragedy and push the issue to the front. And so, I want to make sure that we're looking at this as the whole picture, because we are going to lock ourselves in to these 3 additional full-time people if we go forward.
We're not capitalizing on a tragedy. That's not what we're doing. The tragedy gave us a moment of reflection. We reflected, and we feel like this is a service that the community needs. We understand there's room for disagreement on that, but we're not capitalizing on a tragedy.
Can we also, while we are doing this, as I mentioned earlier about the study, about the traffic stop, all this, I don't think you guys gonna disagree on like doing that to find out exactly what the,
Yeah, I think we
What's
said we were
happening?
going to get that information last spring. What's the status of that?
I meet monthly with the university on that. Because of the delay, they added another year's worth of information. The can keeps getting kicked, but we expect it soon. I know I've told you that more than once
Yeah.
now. I apologize for that. We're just waiting on the university. From what I understand, they're wrapping it up. We haven't seen it yet, so but hopefully it's soon.
what about traffic stop?
That's what we're talking. The traffic stop study. That's the
The
study.
study by the university?
Correct.
There is no data like locally in our,
Oh, we have
City
all the
here?
traffic stop data is in the annual report that we put out. Yep.
yes, I guess, can you even forward it to me if everybody saw it? Or, I just want to know that.
Sure. We post it on the website. It's on the city's website, but we can get it to you.
No, yeah, please get it to me or city manager.
Or if we could at least get a real timeline of when,
Yeah, and
because it's been years that we've been.
can we reach
I
out
care
to them?
deeply about knowing where we are when it comes to the racial disparities. And
I think we can reach out to them and ask them for deadline. Are they doing it for free or why is the
no, we hired them to do it.
Yes, then we did not
Replacing
tell
the St.
them.
Ambrose.
We don't tell them like how long.
Well,
I can get
that's
that.
what I'm asking for,
Yep.
is if we could please move that along.
We used to have a
Yes.
guy from St. Ambrose
Thank
who
you.
used to do it, and then several years ago he switched, but I can't remember
Okay.
exactly when.
Yep.
Sure.
All right, anything else on this topic? I guess before we move on, I want to make sure that Councilor Burgess, you were asking if there could be, looking at other departments to see what their needs are.
Well, I think, each year when we talk about, I think about it particularly this last budget conversation, I think the fire department, we talked a lot about it, right? Of like, when we see the requests for adding staff positions, it's already gone through, the negotiation that every department kind of has internally with themselves, what they request to city manager's office and the meetings that they have to get to a place, of coming to us. And I think we don't have transparency into that, which is fine. That's the process. But I really want to frame this in the context of the budget impact. And if we're going to lock ourselves into 3 additional full-time positions, like what are we foregoing? And to me, the easiest comparison is like other departments where we have these same staffing pattern issues that maybe haven't been able to rise to the forefront, and because I do think these staffing patterns are, I don't know that it's going to get better, right, for police if we don't add.
So I do think
positions.
that this is going through the normal process where, if we were to use the transit that we just heard, they were going through overtime after overtime because of a particular moment in time that it probably lasted a little longer. But I'm sure that wave is what they experienced a lot. But as they step back in that moment in time to say, you know what, we need to really reassess our staffing pattern, and we need 4 additional positions. And it elevated where the city manager's office agreed that this is something that needs to come to the council. So I think that did go through the right channels, the right process. This is also going through the right process as well, where the police department in this moment in time, as we mentioned, this has been kind of a position in the back that's kind of been needed, but in this moment in time, stepping back and reflecting, this is the service that is needed, and that's why this is being brought before us, is my belief.
Well, and maybe I can just react a little bit. We had three counselors had a meeting with Jeff on Friday where it was made very clear to us that this was the opening of a conversation. And tonight, we may be voting in 2 weeks from today. So I'm just feeling like there's something else going on that I'm missing, and it's making me very uncomfortable for what, are we opening a conversation? No, we're actually going to have a proposal to vote on in 2 weeks.
I from what I said in that meeting, the council should vote when you're comfortable voting. And that's what I was trying to express. If you want the traffic stop disparity study before you vote, then your position is we should wait. If others are ready to vote now, then they vote now. That's what I was trying to convey. Everybody has different concerns. That doesn't make anybody right or wrong, but when I feel the council's ready to cast a vote, then I would bring it forward.
Okay, thank you.
With that information, one thing, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, I would find it useful to kind of take a look at the expected cost, the projected cost of these three positions, balanced out against what our current cost is, funding this kind of coverage in terms of like the difference in overtime, sort of like the hard costs. So it'd be like, $380,000 minus the overtime, right? That we'd be savings there. Plus, and if there's some way to probably not quantify, but maybe qualify the soft costs, things in terms of officer burnout, what's it look like? So what's the full scope of what we would be and would not be getting by adding these three positions? I think that would be helpful to me.
That'd be good.
I don't know if you're asking staff to do all of that, but we know what burnout is when it comes down to people working overtime.
Sure.
Also, this is a position specific to downtown, which I don't know if everybody knows Officer Fowler, but he's phenomenal, awesome, and amazing. I do think that just having any officer, doing overtime, there's a lot of reasons why you don't want to do that. But you also want someone that will have some specific trainings and more or engagement specific to the needs of the downtown and that nightlife. And so while we're having all these officers work, it's great. We're getting the need met. But you really want someone trained for that position. And I think that's something that we can't lose sight of.
I actually agree. That's when I was thinking soft benefit or soft cost. That's kind of right. We're on the same page, Mayor. So,
Are we Dustin, Chiefs? Are we currently doing overtime? I'm assuming the answer is no. I just want to make sure. Doing overtime for like the Wednesday and Thursday, like community building that you envision.
No, not unless there's an event going on. If there's a specific event, yes, but no.
Okay, I just wanted to try to get a scope.
All right. Anything else on this topic? All right. We're going to move on to item number 4, which is council updates on assigned boards, commissions, and committees.
oh, maybe not tonight.
And I should have did this under the information packet discussion, but this is related to not really a commission but it would be something else. Would the council be interested in having a youth council discussion in a future meeting?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, so we'll just put that down. All right,
that'd be awesome.
great. Hearing no updates from council, we are adjourned with our work session, and we'll be back at 6 p.m. for our formal agenda.